Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As you know, my name is Bob Evans. I'm the CFO for Ascot Resources. I thank you for this opportunity to share our exciting story with you. John Toffin is the president and CEO of Ascot, and he sends his apologies that he couldn't be here today. From my point of view, the fortunate thing about his absence is that I now get to give you my own personal take on the Ascot story. Ascot is basically gold. If you're not a believer in gold, I'm not going to try and convince you to be one. But if you're a fan of gold, I think you'll find this an interesting and worthwhile listening to. Now, I'm not going to run through our corporate presentation. It would take too long. I'm just going to give you the real high-level view. If you're interested in finding out more, I have Graham Evans, Chief Geologist, with us here today, and he'd be happy to meet with you and give you the full technical story. Rather than preamble this presentation with the normal forward-looking notes and warnings and caveats, I'll just say I'm an accountant. I'm not a geologist. I'm not an engineer. So if I say anything technical at all, just remember, I'm an accountant. Now, our flagship property is the premier DILWORTH gold-silver project, and it's located near the town of Stewart in northwest British Columbia, Canada, in an area known as the Golden Triangle. The Golden Triangle has been active in exploration, discovery, and production of many high-grade mines over the past 100 years. Significant projects there include Pretium's Brucejack and Valley of the Kings gold deposit, Imperial Metals' Red Chris Porphyry gold mine, Teck and Nova Gold's Galore Creek deposit, Teck's Shaft Creek Porphyry gold deposit, and Seabridge's Deep Curve project. John Toffin, our president, is no stranger to this area. John was president and CEO of a company called Delaware Resources that discovered the Snip mine in the Golden Triangle in 1986. Snip produced over 1 million ounces of gold at a grade close to an ounce per ton. The share price went from 25 cents to $28 when it was sold to Cominco. John's next company, Stikine Resources, went on to discover the SK Creek mine. SK Creek produced 3.27 million ounces of gold at a head grade of 1.5 ounces per ton, and also produced 158 million ounces of silver. This company traded up from pennies to its ultimate sale price of $75 when it was sold to Corona. I was fortunate enough to be with John on that Stikine part of the journey. This now brings us to John's third company, Ascot Resources. Ascot acquired the rights to the DILWORTH property from Boliden in 2007 and the contiguous Premier property in 2009. These properties are located in the southern end of the Golden Triangle. The earn-in will be complete in June of this year when we make a final payment of approximately $7 million. The funds for this payment are already in the corporate treasury. Now, Premier has seen production by several operators in the past 100 years and has historical production of 2.1 million ounces of gold and 44 million ounces of silver, plus lead, zinc, and copper. As you can see from this slide, most of the historic production was in the first half of the 20th century, and the average gold grade was over 1/3 of an ounce. Most of the historic production came from an area known as the Glory Hole. The infrastructure at Premier includes a mill and assay labs, crusher setup, and a tailings area with multi-year capacity. A new hydroelectric project crosses the property. There are haulage roads throughout. 4-level and 6-level adits provide existing access to the underground, and that combined with lower elevations of between 250 to 800 meters above sea level create a very attractive infrastructure. The site is accessible by paved road from Stewart and can be traveled within 30 minutes. So we have no need of a site camp. We mobilize from town each day. The property itself is very large, covering over 105 square kilometers. We started our exploration programs on the northern portion of the property. Back in that time, the major mining companies were looking for large bulk tonnage operations. In 2014, a 43101 compliant resource of 2.8 million ounces of gold indicated and 1.8 million ounces inferred was completed on the Missouri, Martha Ellen, and Dilworth portion of the property. The portion that the resource was on represents only 30% of the potential target in this area. As I told you, I'm a numbers guy, so this resource is at about a gram. So if we use $50 per ounce for the value of gold in the ground, this 30% of the target would have a value exceeding $200 million. Now, this isn't the real exciting part of our story, but it's where it began. But before I leave this slide, I want you to note that there's widespread high-grade gold values in this bulk tonnage resource, which we may eventually be able to exploit separately. Since 2014, we've concentrated our efforts on developing the Premier Mine area, which is located in the southern portion of our property. The Premier Mine area was always going to be our primary target, as that's where the previous high-grade gold production had come from. However, it took us several years to recover and do a compilation of the over 4,500 historic drill holes that were there and assemble them into a working database. And this is where you get to what, for me, is the exciting part of the story. The results of that compilation indicate the previous operators may have only mined between 10 and 15% of the minerals in place in this particular area. The 2.1 million ounces of gold and 45 million ounces of silver mined may only be a fraction of what's still there. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that accountants' dreams are made of. And you say that, that 2.1 million ounces of gold and 45 million ounces of silver may only be a fraction of what's still left there. Historically, there are 694 holes of Premier that have intersections grading over an ounce per ton. 291 of these holes were drilled by Ascot since 2009. And of these, 156 had intersections grading greater than 3 ounces per ton. That's a high number of high-grade holes. And to this non-technical accountant, it means there's likely a lot of high-grade gold in the deposit. A showpiece hole was drilled in 2014, and it returned values of over 14,000 grams per ton gold and nearly 7,000 grams silver. That's 460 ounces of gold and 210 ounces of silver over a 3/4 of a meter intercept. Many of our high-grade intercepts also have abundant 5 to 10 gram gold within the quartz breccias around them, making for very discrete high-grade targets for us to focus on. The Big Missouri, Martha Ellen, and Dilworth to the north also have 55 holes drilled with grades of over an ounce per ton. This area is 6 kilometers away from Premier, and most of the area in between is totally untested. The geology, though, is similar to Premier's. Now, Ascot owns its own drill rigs, and this, combined with its proximity to Stewart, means it can drill for all-in costs, including assays, for less than $80 Canadian per meter. This is about a third of the industry average, and it's very significant, especially given the size of this year's drill program. Ascot plans for 2017 include 120,000 meters of surface drilling, with a target of establishing an initial 2 to 3 million ounce high-grade gold resource. This alone would be a massive drill program for a junior company. At its peak, it will involve up to 8 drill rigs. I believe it's the largest exploration and development program planned in British Columbia this year, and it may be the largest in Canada. Using a conservative value of $200 per ounce gold in the ground for high grade, this drilling could establish an initial resource with a value exceeding 600 million. Later in the season, we plan an additional 20,000 meters of surface drilling, and it's going to explore grassroots targets and high-grade areas in the mid and northern portions of our property. Now, in addition, in 2017, we plan to start an underground program of rehabilitation and development to allow access to mineralized zones and establish underground drill stations. This work will allow for approximately 27,000 meters of underground drilling for indicated resource definition focused on the high-grade Lunchroom, Obscene, and 602 zones. As you can see from the slide, these zones are close to the old Glory Hole zone where most of the historic production came from. The purpose here is to establish within the resource area an initial indicator resource of between 600,000 to 750,000 ounces of high-grade gold that's amenable to near-term production. These are just our plans for 2017 and by no means represent the overall potential to expand the high-grade component of this area. Now, Ascot isn't just Premier and Dilworth. In Washington State, in the United States, Ascot owns a copper-gold porphyry property called Mount Margaret. This property is near Mount St. Helens, which was the scene of a volcanic eruption in 1980. It's located in a deemed industrial zone and is easily accessible. Prior to 1980, a large American company called Duval was exploring the property. Duval drilled a series of vertical holes 400 feet deep and established a non-compliant resource of 523 million tons, grading 0.56% copper equivalent. After the volcanic eruption in 1980, the property sat literally covered in dust for over 30 years until Ascot acquired it in 2010. In 2010, Ascot drilled 11 450 to 500 meter holes at a 60-degree angle. The drilling more than doubled the volume of the deposit in the area tested and increased the copper grade by 15%. Ascot has applied to drill 63 more holes, which would cost an estimated $6.5 million US. This program, because of the straightforward geology of Mount Margaret, would allow a compliant 43101 resource report to be filed. The program would take less than a year season to complete. Prior to the Trump administration, Ascot was experiencing unreasonable difficulties in getting its exploration program permitted here. Now we expect, with the positive changes in the Department of the Environmental Protection Agency, to receive this permit for drilling within the next few months. The property is located in an area that has a high rate of unemployment, and our project is strongly supported by the local community. To put this project in perspective, the 1 billion tons of 0.56% copper equivalent ore, which we are targeting to prove up with our drill, would have, the minerals in that would have a gross value exceeding $30 billion at today's commodity prices. This project will be very exciting and has the potential to add significantly to future shareholder value. Ascot currently has about 28 million in the treasury, and it has a market cap of about 250 million. The largest shareholder is Eric Sprott, who bought his position last year, and he holds about 13% of the common shares. Management holds about 6%, and there are no significant institutional investors. So in summary, we have an aggressive 20 million budget for Premier for 2017, the funds for which are already in the Treasury. We've already spent over 40 million Canadian on the property and believe this year we will establish a 2 to 3 million ounce high-grade resource in the Premier mine area. Within this resource, we expect to outline an up to 750,000 ounces amenable to near-term production. The longer-term potential for this property is to develop what the company believes will be a 10 to 20 million ounce gold resource. With the major mining companies now looking to add to their near-term gold reserves, we believe Ascot is in an enviable position. We have a world-class property at Premier that is well advanced. It's in a stable jurisdiction with superb existing infrastructure. Our initial in-house estimates are that we could put this property into production for a total capex of under 200 million. Ascot's other major property, Mount Margaret, though not as advanced as Premier, also has world-class potential. Ascot expects to be able to approve this once it's received the go-ahead for its planned drill program. With these programs, 2017 will be a pivotal and exciting year for Ascot, one in which we hope to add significant value for shareholders. That, ladies and gentlemen, is how the CFO sees the properties. I know it's a non-technical thing, but maybe it's one you can still appreciate. I thank you for your time.